Today's video is part 3 of 4 iconic Metallica guitar tones using the Fender Tone Master Pro. For this preset, I'm going to be creating tones from Metallica's third album, Master of Puppets, which was released in 1986. So this is my Master of Puppets preset. I'm going to turn off all of these effects to start and show you the bass tone just using the amp and speakers. So this is my bass tone using the Marksman Channel 2, which is based on the Mesa Boogie Mark II C+. James Hetfield used this amp when he was recording Master of Puppets, although I've read that he also used the JCM 800 and he may have used those in parallel. I might show you that later on, but with this preset, I'm just going to concentrate on a single amp. The settings are a bit weird, and I've just used the default settings pretty much that when you load the actual amp model. So you have like this weird sort of EQ that normally you wouldn't have on any amp. Treble is almost at 10 and the bass is at 1. So I would have thought you'd put the bass at 10, treble at 10, scoop the mids and go with that sound, but it doesn't quite sound right. So there's so much bass, it's ridiculous. So cut that bass all the way down. And I've also got the EQ set to a pretty aggressive curve here as well to scoop the mids. 750 is all the way down to the bottom. And on the second page of the amp settings, I have the graphic EQ on. Without it, by the way, it sounds like this. On. I also have the bright on and the LD bright on. So your bass tone is this. Definitely not sounding like Master of Puppets yet. But let's go over the speaker cabs first. First cabinet I used is a 4x12 British G65. I have an MD421 mic, 1 inch off the cap edge. I've got the low cut set to 100 Hz and the high cut all the way down to 4.4 kHz. The second cabinet is a British V30. I have an SM57 on the cap edge. I also copied the same settings of 100 Hz low cut and 4.4 kHz high cut. This is pretty severe, but I wanted to take all that top end out of the tone. I then used the splitter so that I have the G65 set to 52% and the V30 set to 100%. But first, let me show you how the V30 sound on their own. And this is the G65 cab on its own. And then mix them back together. So you're probably still thinking that does not sound right. Well, this is where the additional EQ comes in. This is the same graphic EQ, the EQ5 graphic, that is from the Mark II. Exactly the same as this, but used as a separate pedal after the speaker cabs. Now the difference here, when I turn it on, that's starting to sound a lot more like the original. The next pedal that I added was the green box. I've got the overdrive off, the tone at noon and the level at noon, and it just adds a little bit of gain on top. With this much gain, you get a little bit of hiss. So I've added a noise gate in front of the chain, and I've used the metal gate noise reducer. And when you turn that on, you'll hear that the hiss disappears. And finally, as I always do, I've added a reverb. This is the large room reverb. There's not a lot going on. And that was my rhythm preset. I've also added a solo. And if you go back, you'll see that it disengages the noise gate, the graphic EQ, and the large room reverb. It also switches on a digital delay and a large hall reverb. Without the digital delay and just the reverb, this is the difference if you had the EQ still on. I thought it sounded a bit thin, so switching that off. Adds that mid-range back in so it cuts through the mix. Then I added the digital delay. It's quite subtle. So that's my Master of Puppets preset called JGG Pastor of Muppets. I just want to show you quickly how to do that parallel amp chain that I mentioned earlier. So go back to the rhythm set and then change to instrument parallel 2. Drag the cabs to the second parallel loop here. And I will change the, this was on what, 52. Level B was on 100%. Whoops. And now I'm going to put the Mark II in the top here. I'm going to add a block. I'm going to add the JCM 800, which is called a British 800, in this position. And I'm going to put that to 50-50 for now, just until we see how that sounds. And I'm going to, well, let's just crank the gain in this one. I'm going to scoop the mids. Let's just go crazy. Now, let's first of all see how that JCM 800 is sounding. Add a bit of presence. Remember, those speaker cabs are taking all the top end out, cutting at 4.4 kilohertz. Okay. And this is the Mark II. Which weirdly, you'd actually think it was the other way around. So let's put them both to 50% and see how that sounds. As always, I recommend experimenting. Just try stuff out. This might not be the amp combination that sounds best for you. You might think that the EVH amp on its own sounds even better because you've managed to EQ it better and got it sounding more like the original. It's just all about trying things out. So just have fun with it. But my original preset will just have the Mark II for now. I hope you enjoyed this preset and look out for part 4 coming very soon.